Imagine being tricked with the promise of a good job. Instead, you become a property and you work 20 hours a day on a fishing boat in the middle of nowhere. You're beaten if you slow down. You watch friends murdered and thrown into the sea. And the fish you catch ends up on dinner tables across Europe, America, and beyond. This is not a horror movie. This is the reality for thousands of men from Cambodia, Myanmar, and Laos who became Thailand's seafood slaves. In the middle of the ocean, far from the eyes of the world, a fishing boat becomes more than a boat. It becomes a workplace, a prison, and sometimes a grave. For years, seafood from Thailand traveled to supermarkets, restaurants, and dinner tables across the world. But behind the price tag was another story. Migrant workers pulled into dangerous labor, trapped on boats, beaten, threatened, and in some cases treated like disposable tools in a machine built to catch fish as cheaply as possible. This video asks a simple but urgent question. How did an industry so tied to global trade, political power, and consumer demand become a stage for modern slavery? And why did the answers offered by governments, companies, and NGOs solve only part of the problem? To understand this crisis, we need to step back. Thailand's fishing industry grew into a major export sector, feeding international markets and linking coastal labor to global supply chains. At the same time, the industry depended heavily on migrant workers, especially from Myanmar and Cambodia. Many came looking for work, safety, or a way to support families. Instead, some were pulled into debt, deception, and harsh control. The scandal burst into public view in 2014 when major news reports exposed what they called slave labor in Thai marine fisheries. Those reports were amplified by labor solidarity groups and anti-trafficking organizations, especially the Labor Rights Protection Network and the Environmental Justice Foundation. What made the moment powerful was not only the horror of the abuse, but the timing. Around the world, the anti-slavery movement was gaining force. The language of modern slavery was becoming a political weapon, and once that language entered the Thai seafood story, the pressure grew fast. Here's how the system works. Middlemen on the borders promise good jobs like drying fish or working in ports. Instead, they sell men to boat captains for a few $100s. Once on board, workers are told they owe money for food, transport, or fake fees. This debt never seems to end. They work around the clock with little sleep. Many are beaten or worse if they complain. Boats stay at sea for months or even years, using transshipment at sea to hide illegal fishing in other countries' waters. Trash fish, small, juvenile, or rotting fish, is a huge part of the catch. It gets turned into fishmeal for shrimp farms that supply Western supermarkets. The whole system is built on 3 pillars: overfishing that makes normal fishing unprofitable, migrant workers with few rights, and weak enforcement that lets corruption thrive. In a few minutes, you'll hear directly from survivors about what life on these boats is really like. So escaped. He said, "They would torture and murder the fishers, then throw them into the sea. They abuse the crew in many ways, beating, hitting, and killing out on the ocean. I witnessed murder with my own eyes." Thant told investigators, "Whenever I came back to port, they told me I owed them 20,000 or 30,000 baht. I couldn't ask why. They would beat me. I've seen beatings and killings before, so I didn't dare ask." Yu said, "I want to tell consumers about our troubles. We sacrificed our blood, sweat, and energy. I really would like to let them know about our nightmares." these are not isolated cases. A United Nations report found that 59% of trafficked migrants on Thai boats had witnessed the murder of a fellow worker. Many never come home. If you're finding this deep dive valuable, verify that subscribe button is clicked. We're tracking the political economy of food and agriculture so you don't miss the next video. The fishing economy did not collapse because of one bad captain or one criminal boat. The problem was bigger than that. Research shows that the scandal triggered rapid action from buyers, regulators, and the Thai state. Northern supermarkets and seafood buyers rushed to clean up their supply chains. The European Union issued a yellow card over illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Thailand's military government responded with new laws, worker registration, healthcare rules, contracts, maximum work hours, and port-in, port-out inspection centers known as PIPOs. On paper, these reforms looked strong. In practice, they created a system of surveillance and control that improved some conditions, especially in the short-haul sector, but did not fully free workers from restriction. Many workers still found it difficult to change boats or leave the seafood sector for other work. Some companies also found ways to evade the rules. So the system changed, but it did not disappear. What emerged was a new kind of governance. Part reform, part reputation management, part enforcement theater. Governments wanted to show action. Companies wanted clean supply chains. NGOs wanted urgency, funding, and leverage. The result was a reform process that worked fastest when the public saw slavery as the headline, but much slower when the real issue was broader labor rights. For workers, the story was not abstract. One Cambodian laborer described leaving home to earn money for his family and being sold into slave labor after a broker promised good work. He was forced to work around the clock, slept only in short bursts, and saw violence used to keep people obedient. Similar testimonies from many workers indicate beatings, threats, debt bondage, sleep deprivation, withheld wages, and fear of being thrown into the sea. Some workers disappeared. Others believed captains could kill without consequence. And yet, the story is not only about extreme cruelty. That is the important point. The research shows that many workers were not in the most extreme trafficking situations, but still lived under serious limits. They wanted better wages, safer conditions, and the freedom to move between jobs. They did not always want rescue in the dramatic sense used by media campaigns. They wanted rights that made life livable. This is where the story becomes uncomfortable. The word slavery is powerful. It can mobilize governments, shame brands, and force action. That is why NGOs and media outlets use it. But testimony from victims warns that the rescue frame can oversimplify people's lives. It can treat freedom as a single moment, when in reality freedom is a process. Some rescued fishermen were deported before receiving wages. Some returned home with debts, broken families, and health problems. In some cases, they had been rescued in a way that made their lives worse. That is the structural tension at the center of this story. The language that creates urgency can also hide what workers need next. Not only rescue, but compensation. Not only exposure, but labor mobility. Not only arrests, but follow-up. Quick interruption. If you're finding this deep dive valuable, verify that subscribe button is clicked. We're tracking the political economy of food and agriculture so you don't miss the next video. In the next chapter, we look at the people and institutions that benefited from cheap seafood. The buyers, the processors, the brokers, and the global retail system that kept pressure on costs and pushed risk downward onto workers. This is not just a labor story. It is a political economy story. Cheap seafood in distant markets depended on hidden costs in Thailand's waters. Overfishing, corruption, weak enforcement, and global demand all fed the same system. As fish stocks declined, boats stayed at sea longer, traveled farther, and faced stronger pressure to cut costs. That pressure helped create the conditions for abuse. The Environmental Justice Foundation links slavery, pirate fishing, and ecological decline in one chain. As fish stocks were pushed down, the industry relied more heavily on forced labor and illegal fishing to keep profits moving. In that sense, the abuse of workers and the abuse of the ocean were not separate problems. They were part of the same model. This is why the scandal mattered beyond one country. It exposed how food systems can hide violence inside efficiency, and how global buyers can enjoy low prices while the real human cost stays offshore. By the end of the reforms, the public had seen raids, new laws, and company pledges. But many deeper problems remained. Workers were still vulnerable to dependency on brokers, job lock-in, debt, weak complaint systems, and uneven enforcement. Some officials cleared workers too quickly simply because they had ID cards, while trafficking and abuse could still continue beneath the paperwork. And the consequences of rescue-only thinking remained visible. Families were separated. Compensation was delayed. Health problems accumulated. Some men returned with little more than trauma and debt. The disadvantage of the whole arrangement is clear. When policy focuses only on the most shocking cases, it can leave the larger workforce in a better monitored but still unequal system. That is not full justice. It is partial repair. By the end of the reforms, the public had seen raids, new laws, and company pledges. But many deeper problems remained. Workers were still vulnerable to dependency on brokers, job lock-in, debt, weak complaint systems, and uneven enforcement. Some officials cleared workers too quickly simply because they had ID cards, while trafficking and abuse could still continue beneath the paperwork. And the consequences of rescue-only thinking remained visible. Families were separated. Compensation was delayed. Health problems accumulated. Some men returned with little more than trauma and debt. The disadvantage of the whole arrangement is clear. When policy focuses only on the most shocking cases, it can leave the larger workforce in a better monitored but still unequal system. That is not full justice. It is partial repair.
So what should we learn from this story? First, slavery scandals can reveal hidden abuse, but they do not automatically solve the wider labor system. Second, rescue matters, but workers also need wages, mobility, healthcare, and a real chance to move on with dignity. Third, supply chains are political. The cheapest product often carries costs hidden far from the consumer. Fourth, enforcement without follow-up can leave survivors stranded after the headlines fade. Fifth, environmental decline and labor abuse can grow together inside the same export economy. Sixth, real change needs more than outrage. It needs monitoring, compensation, labor rights, and pressure on the companies and states that benefit from the system. Watch out for the next video on the political economy of food and agriculture, and check the channel for other interesting videos. Leave a comment on the video with your thoughts on what real justice for seafood workers should look like.